The following presentation is going to be on a study which I conducted as part of my PhD project on non-technical skills in agriculture, which consisted of a news media analysis. My name is Ilinca Ruxandratone. I'm a final year PhD student and I'm supervised by my lead supervisor, Dr. Amy Irwin, at the University of Aberdeen. The current project looked at news media reports of agricultural accidents. These reports were analyzed through a mixed method content analysis, and the overall aim of the project was to identify instances of non-technical skills previously found in agriculture. I'd like to start by introducing the background of the project. News media reports can supplement official injury surveillance, and there are various studies which have summarized injury trends from databases of news media reports on farm injury, which can in turn inform prevention activities. Media articles can also be analyzed through content analysis, as these may feature self-reports or witness reports of these accidents and incidents. In the UK and Ireland, agriculture is the most dangerous industry based on the rate of fatalities. However, to our knowledge, there is no similar project to the above conducted in these countries. The news media can provide insight into non-technical skills, or NTS in short, involved in agricultural accidents. So these are social and cognitive skills which complement technical knowledge and skills and contribute to safe and effective task performance. NTS have been previously identified as useful in agriculture through an interview study with farmers from the UK. As mentioned before, the overall aim of this study was to consolidate the developed taxonomy of NTS by analyzing news media reports. Moving on to the method of conducting the current study, in terms of the search of relevant news media articles, this was conducted retroactively through Google as a search engine between October and November 2020 through keywords such as farm injury, farm accident, etc. Additional relevant articles were also retrieved directly from newspaper websites, which were accessed through the initial Google search. In terms of the sources of news media articles, these consisted primarily of agricultural commercial media, but also general media and a few other online sources such as websites. In terms of ethics, we didn't need ethical approval because information was freely available and it was collected from secondary sources. In terms of the inclusion criteria, one criterion was that the articles featured agricultural incidents which occurred after 2015, so fairly recent incidents. And another criterion was that they occurred in the UK or Ireland. And the final one was that sufficient detail was provided on contributing factors, including non-technical skills. The exclusion criteria was that exact duplicates of the articles were excluded. Materials comprised of 40 articles, which were selected in the final sample, which described a total of 19 accidents. The analysis of these articles was a mixed method content analysis, which focused on non-technical skills, elements of these NTS, and also positive and negative behaviors of these elements in agriculture. Decision-making was the most frequently mentioned non-technical skill, so it appeared in 34 instances. There were some positive examples of adaptive decision-making whereby the farmer generated an alternative course of action in response to environmental cues. And basically, this prevented a more serious accident from happening in most cases. And this was mentioned in 20 cases. Obviously, I stopped the tractor as quick as possible is a quote which illustrates this point. There were also decision-making errors which occurred in the form of poor assessment and management of risk, whereby the farmer ignored task guidelines and protocols that might have minimized the risk, and this was mentioned in 16 instances. A quote which illustrates this point would be, "She wasn't wearing a safety helmet." And finally, decision-making errors also occurred in the form of poor identification and selection of options, whereby the farmer jumped straight into the first identified option, and this was mentioned in 9 instances. For example, open the tank to agitate it again before spreading. Situation awareness was also frequently mentioned as a contributing non-technical skill. Situation awareness errors usually occurred in the form of poor gathering of information. This happened in 17 instances, and usually this was in the form of unavailable knowledge of the environment or the task in 8 cases, forgetting elements in 5 cases, irregular scanning of the environment in 4 cases, or focusing on irrelevant aspects in 2 cases. And an example quote would be, "One Hoggett turned back without being seen by any of us." Some examples of good comprehension were also mentioned in the articles, for instance, appropriate recognition and response to indications or cues within the environment in 9 cases. However, there were also many comprehension errors in the form of poor knowledge of equipment or task in 8 cases. For example, inexplicably, I reached for the extendable ladder and placed it at quite a tight angle. So this demonstrates that the farmer had poor knowledge of the equipment they were using. Errors also occurred in the form of poor projection of future events in 6 cases, whereby the farmer engaged in an action which had immediate adverse consequences. For example, a quick mix and get it out, I thought. Social non-technical skills such as communication, teamwork, and leadership were also mentioned in the articles. There were instances of positive information exchange, such as sharing safety critical information in 16 cases, regarding the location of the farmer or raising the alarm after the incident. For example, the driver shouted, "Look out at me." There were also examples of positive coordination in 6 cases, whereby the farmer engaged in the agreed work activities in concert with other workers. An example quote would be, "I said to the driver to drop them and I would push them off when he was gone." However, there were also errors which occurred due to poor social non-technical skills, specifically due to poor information exchange in 3 cases where the farmer did not pass on or shared important information relevant to the task, also due to poor delegation and task sharing in 2 cases whereby the farmer was reluctant to accept help from others even when fatigued or ill. So this quote illustrates this point. None of my family knew where I was. And finally, there were also leadership errors whereby the farmer or the supervisor in this case did not direct or guide task behaviors appropriately and performed risky behaviors in front of other workers, and this means that they were poorly leading by example. Finally, task management was usually mentioned in the context of organization of resources and infrastructure in 22 cases, whereby the farmer was following relevant guidelines for arranging a safe work environment in 7 cases and ensured that necessary equipment was present and used in 10 cases. However, there were also errors which occurred in the area of task management, whereby the farmer engaged in faulty workarounds in 15 cases or ignored or failed to use suitable equipment for the task in 6 cases. For example, was attempting to manually unclog grain from a combine harvester. To conclude, the current study shows that NTS are important for agricultural safety. However, we should note that media reports can only supplement official injury surveillance systems, so it is important to look at these official sources as well to paint the bigger picture. And finally, more serious and fatal events are more likely to be covered in these articles, so it is important to note that the news media articles used in this study usually featured quite serious accidents.